Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning in to the Phase 1 podcast. August 9th, we are getting started on the entire season. We haven't been able to do this since 2019 because of all the changes in CrossFit, all the changes in the world. We're going to break down the mental game that we're looking for through the entire season. We're going to go through what's actually going to happen in the phase. We're going to talk about the different programs. We're super excited for it. Let's do it. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Full Goon Squad has returned from Madison, Wisconsin. We're gonna make the rounds here. We're gonna go highlight and low light for everybody at the CrossFit Games.
Ooh.
And I'm gonna go first, so neither of mine get stolen because they could be obvious. My highlight is sort of general. There was something about the squat clean run ladder that from the coaching perspective felt so much more like being at the semifinals, being in those places. Both athletes were, monitoring points and the cut lines and everything like that. And, part of the highlight was essentially telling Caroline with those last two workouts, if she wanted to get below the cut line, she had to swing for the fences. And we got that drone shot of her basically running her own lap on one of the first supposedly 200-meter runs that someone said they mapped out and was 270 meters.
I think the other one was like 105 feet too.
People
were the cap on the second
people
heats.
were unnecessarily upset online about that, though.
That's what online is for, right? To be unnecessarily upset about stuff.
That's fair. So I am cheating a little bit by saying both, because then you go into that next round and once again has to take some chances for Caroline, and then Kenzie, maybe not even feeling like she wasn't even sure if she was going to make it through the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually did very well in the first one and then made it to the last bar in the next one. So I would call that highlight, and then the low light super easy. We lived in Detroit for 2 days on the way out there. So that's too easy.
Highlight, I would say having two teenagers, one in each age division in the first year of our programming, get to the CrossFit Games and then both finish in the top 5. That's pretty cool. It's fun to see Sophie win her heat and Jenna coming in second, but a very close second. So getting them to see both of them finish very well, and what I would say is a very well-balanced test, the bar muscle-up ski double under workout. Very exciting to see, and I know both of them really had a fun weekend that showed them what they need to work on and what's already in the bag. So I always like to use the most recent test as the impetus for how we train moving forward. So I think both of them have a very clear picture of what's to come, and I got to watch the programming for this year very closely, more so than I had in years past. So I have a pretty good perspective on what needs to change for the next coming year. So I like that. And then the low light would probably be the amount of time we spent in Chili's in Detroit. We were there for
my highlight.
We were there for like 6 fucking hours, and the lady that was there was like,
my low light was PF Chang's, highlight was Chili's.
That surprised me. We got up to the hostess table, and they're like, we had 6, and like, cool, we have 5 spots. And then we're like, all right, well, how are we gonna do this? There's one there. And she's like, well, do you fucking want them or not? Basically. She didn't say exactly those words, but that's kind of how it went. So I'd say low light.
You kind of stole
Detroit.
mine, but it's fine.
That was more specific.
I'm gonna break the rules, and I'm gonna go 2 highlights, which is kind of weird for me.
Right?
Highlight 1 is
You have highlights?
Positivity Monday with Hunter.
Positivity Mondays. That's more like
it's neither Monday
Yeah.
nor is this going to publish on Monday.
We got to make that. That's got to be like a quarterly thing. That can't be a weekly.
That's a
thing.
yearly at best.
Positive quarterly Mondays with Hunter.
Love it.
Highlight 1 is, I'm gonna say, and in no particular order, is Justin being on the podium again. Third place finish for Justin LaSala. He's kind of like great, awesome guy. And like just kind of his personality probably just like resonates with me a little bit more. He's got that kind of like put your head down, like shut up and work sort of mentality. Does a lot of stuff programming wise, kind of on his own. Like he knows he's the kind of athlete who, we've talked about this before, the kind of athlete who kind of takes charge of his own program and his own fate and stuff like that. And a lot of people wouldn't maybe necessarily trust themselves to do that. And it obviously showed that the fact that he was on the podium again. So that's one of them. And then the other one is probably Caroline, in that also in the clean event, like finishing, getting on like the finish blocks. And it's not as much like about her placing in the event and where that was in the weekend or anything like that. It's more of to me, it was like a little bit more symbolic of just like everybody knows every year you have that, you know, it's a speed snatch ladder or some sort of ladder mixed with running or whatever it is, a very similar event every year. And everybody, you know, the athlete, it's always that last heavy bar. The crowd gets excited. They pull the lift off. They do that fucking drop and super awkward hop over the bar that you think they're going to trip on every time. And then like jumping on the blocks. And like for an athlete, that's really cool. And then as a spectator, like we all see it on from a different perspective, whether it's like on YouTube, like the camera's pointed up at that athlete. And regardless of where you finish, like people see that and they're just like, yeah, that person got on the finish mat and Caroline's like fired up. It was more of the symbolic, like, hey, you did a workout in the Coliseum at the CrossFit Games, you finished, you got a solid score. Like it was more just like, hey, like that's awesome. That's a cool highlight that you will hopefully remember forever as just kind of like an important moment.
Yeah, it's a couple things for me. It's like the culmination of everything leads you to that point and, you know, getting the honor of going up there. But then also is a big like mental breakthrough for her because she's the type who, if she decides before a workout she's going to lift a weight, she makes it look like an absolute joke.
Right.
But then on the, you know, the dark side of that situation is if I don't think I can go there, it can be hard to convince yourself to do that. And we talked in the back about, hey, like, if you're going to put your belt on, you're going to make up your mind 6 feet away from this barbell and then you're just going to go lift it. Yeah. And for her to, you know, that's one thing you have to be able to do as a competitor. You have to be able to say, I'm going to listen to the crowd. I'm going to like really buy into this moment.
Yeah.
She walked up to the weight, she smoked it. It's, you know, whatever, 99% of her 1 rep max. And then she got to jump on. So there's something very symbolic about that, which is pretty great.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we're going to get down to business now. This is the Phase 1 podcast. Trivia time.
Fuck, I'm out.
When is the last Phase 1 that Misfit Athletics has had?
When was the last Phase 1?
I don't know. I threw that calendar out.
Have we had a Phase 1?
That's how long it's been, ladies and gentlemen.
Good answer.
Phase 1?
November 18th, 2019 was the last time that we had a Phase 1.
That checks out.
That October Open.
So not only is this podcast, you know, your usual programming, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how we're breaking things down. It's also bigger than that for us because this is how we want to build an athlete. We've been working on what this means and fine-tuning it for years now, and this is only the second time that we get to do it, when in actuality it's actually the first time that we get to do it because the season disappeared. Yes, exactly. So we've had this plan in place and we've had the details of the plan in place for so long, and luckily that allows us to reevaluate, to figure out exactly how we want to do things, to look at things through a different lens. But this podcast is so that you can peek behind the curtain of how we're programming, not only for Phase 1, but for Phases 1 through 4, and then back into the comp blocks. When we get the opportunity to do this in a thoughtful, periodized way, we get to really set markers for athletes. We get to say, okay, we're trying to improve this, and then this, and then this, and it's in a sequential order. Of course, we still rely on variance, and we're still making sure that all these different things are happening, but there is a roadmap from August 9th to February, and then February through to the CrossFit Games. And for what you need to be as an analytical mind when it comes to being a programmer and to building, you know, more the macro version of these schedules, like that puts a coach at ease when you know, okay, here's what we're working on. Here's the amount of time that we have to get better at this thing. Here's how, working this energy system and biasing it to this movement affects the next movement. There's a lot that goes into this stuff. And to be able to really put a stamp, circle the date on August 9th and say, this is when we're getting this started. And this is how we can build a complete athlete over the course of a season. Like, this is a kind of almost like a landmark moment for us. It's a very much a restarting. And yeah, I mean, I can't
It's
wait
also an
for it to get
opportunity if
started.
you're like brand new or you just got excited from watching the CrossFit games and you're like, you know what, that looks pretty fun. And I'd like to aspire, maybe not to go to the CrossFit games, but compete at a local level or do something like that. And you're running what the best way to get started is. Like, that is our job, is to make sure you understand where you're starting and where you're going and how that will lead to being a better athlete. And, for someone who hasn't done a full phase or a full year of programming on our program for a long time, we do the affiliate version of it here, which is very similar to the Misfit blog. It's just like a nice chance to refocus on what's important and make sure that, you're taking the action steps now, so you don't get to, the first week of February and going, oh shit, I got to get in shape in the next 2 weeks. Like, if you are serious about taking the next year serious, you need to start now, because it does take a good amount of time to build the base that you need to build the building blocks to eventually, perform your best and potentially peak as you're getting yourself towards your quarterfinal.
Yeah, I think you guys hit it. I don't have anything to.
You're done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Ted, can we clock this one?
Positivity, money, wrap it up.
So two things that we have to, I want to make sure that we say before we move on. An athlete can go into any one of our phases inside of a bubble and get fitter and get stronger. The real, kind of power of it though is the order of how things go. Mm-hmm. So we're starting phase 1 and we're looking at, okay, so we have all these categories of lifts. Not only what do we want to happen earlier on in the season, but then how does that move from this phase to the next phase and moving on? When we go into aerobic and anaerobic bias, we start the year with, sure, we'll get into it, but we start the year with the C2 bike, because we're saying, okay, there's no other machine that can manipulate your aerobic system and your ability to flush through your largest muscle groups than the C2 bike. Yeah. Any other machine that we have involves the total body. Sometimes, you think about with running, you don't have a seat to sit on. So think about how your heart rate's going to be much higher with that. There's something very special about the tool of the C2 bike. We are, instead of back squatting for phase 1 this year, we are deadlifting for that high CNS lift, because then we're going into the clean. And then we're going to make sure that your back squat is there before we go into the snatch. So we just got to have all of these pieces, again, that come together and go through. What I don't want to do in this podcast is just have a bulletized list. So I'm going to go somewhat rapid fire when it comes to the actual lifting stuff. And then you guys feel free to jump in and say, hey, this is, why we're doing what we're doing. So your high CNS lift, basically the lift that we are trying to move the needle on your 1 rep max or your 3 rep max, like they just had in the last chance qualifier, is going to be the deadlift. The asterisk here is that if you are very good at deadlifting, just like last year, I'd love to see you use a trap bar, not only for the test, but for the entire phase. If you struggle with driving through your legs in the squat, in the first pull of the clean and the snatch, you can personalize this and go back to the trap bar. That is going to allow you to develop some musculature. And typically when someone's good at the deadlift, they have that more traditional powerlifting setup, and it is very posterior dominant.
Yeah, I was just going to say the biggest difference with the trap bar versus the traditional barbell is just that setup position, right? If you're someone that relies on glutes and hamstrings to deadlift with your robust lower back, but you really can't find a way to get the bar in a good position from going from your first pull back into your second pull and third pull in your Olympic lifts, this is a great way for you to recruit some of that musculature and teach yourself how to push your feet through the floor, which is a cue you probably heard us say on tip videos in the past. That's not so much about lifting the deadlift bar as it is to push your 3 feet through the floor. I personally find the trap bar is easier to feel that phenomenon of pushing your feet through the ground versus the barbell that typically is loaded in the front half of your frontal plane, which makes it a little bit easier to rely on the muscles that are bigger in the back half of your body, but not necessarily use the front half, which then doesn't translate to the Olympic lifts. So for me, it just gives you a little different stimulus. And we're asking people who are monsters with deadlifts, hey, you deadlift 500, 550 plus, like congratulations, like that's a good amount. Let's work on something that's actually going to move the needle for you.
Yeah, I think speaking specifically to the trap or the deadlift, if you're somebody who's a really strong deadlifter, there's a reasonable chance that maybe you're not as strong of a squatter. A lot of times people are kind of one or the other, and the trap bar does a really good job of forcing that kind of leg, like full lower half recruitment as opposed to just posterior chain. And that translates really well, or will benefit you a lot in like the clean work. You'll get into like the clean work being the skill. And also, like you mentioned earlier, the clean, hey, we're going to do skill work in the clean this phase so that we can pull really heavy in the clean next phase. So the trap bar is a really good way, especially if you are a strong deadlifter. Maybe that means you're not as great of an Olympic lifter or squatter, and the trap bar deadlift can kind of tackle both in a way.
Right. So they both already started to address it a little bit, but that the lift that we're really going to break down from a technique standpoint in phase one is the squat clean. And you start to look at this plan taking shape. You're pulling really heavy from the floor, you're fixing your movement patterns, and then phase two, we go into the, trying to peak the squat clean when it goes there. Yeah,
the funny thing I was just thinking about as you were talking there too, in high-level CrossFit competitions, you have to earn the right to get to the highest level to even test your deadlift. Like, when's the last time they asked you to test your deadlift in the open or quarterfinals? Like, obviously we only had one quarterfinal, but for the most part, you need to get to the pinnacle of the sport to really see where your deadlift's at, where it actually matters that you can pull 500-600 pounds. Our sport is more GPP in terms of like, can you do 315 for 45 reps in a 3-minute window? So if you're looking to basically earn the right to down the road pull a really heavy deadlift, like it's more important that you get strong and what transfers to other movements that are actually tested at those lower levels, so that eventually you can attain the ability to go to the high level competition, and then you get to show off if you've got a big deadlift.
Yeah, the skill work being the clean, and then obviously in later phases we'll have the snatch in there. That positional work for a lot of athletes moves the needle more than the high CNS work does. Now, obviously you put the two together and you're going to be the best lifter that you can be, but we are, putting, an exclamation point on the fact that moving your body around a barbell is the art of weightlifting, not moving the barbell. When you learn to do that and then it translates to the floor, that's when we can really start to take your GPP, all the work that you're doing in Metcons, put it together, and then you can actually go out there and put up a number when they do ask for a 1 rep max that is, indicative of how strong you actually are. A staple phase one, or back in the day cycle one, is a lot of strict press and bench press. We are essentially starting the year making sure that you up your pressing strength. We're looking at typically overhead stability, maybe a lockout when it comes to a push press or not the prettiest push jerk. We're looking to really solidify those positions, add some fast twitch fibers. And then the real reason we're benching while we're strict pressing is, again, to create stability, to create a healthy shoulder. Back in the day, there was a lot of really good research on the more planes that you press through, the more stable shoulder you're going to have, less injury risk. So we're going to start there. That translates phase two to the push press. And the one thing that I will say for the people that do take the time to listen to this podcast is the barbell needs to move fast, and you need to stay in skill transfer positions. So if you're in a position that would never be part of a push press or a push jerk, if you're leaning way back to get that standing bench press, if you are pressing slow, it is not going to translate. Honestly, a giant waste of your time. You're taking up time in the gym that, could be dedicated to something else. So the reason why I'm saying that specifically is because if you're looking at the percentages that are recommended and you cannot continue to press the bar fast, you are going to get more out of it by dropping down 5%. It's not a big deal. It does not matter. Your 1 rep max strict press or bench press rarely matters. We are looking, again, to create speed and to create stable positions. So that's, basically the public service announcement. If you get into the bro session and you start to get competitive, it's not going to help you.
Save the slow stuff for your accessory stuff that's around your shoulder joint, the band pull aparts, the Da Vinci raises, those other things are times to develop some slow, maybe some slow twitch in your upper body, which can also be done on the skier. But, one thing we talk about all the time with handstand pushups is your upper body's all fast twitch. So if you're moving slowly, you're not developing the fast twitch, you're not going to have the ability to have that stamina when it actually counts. So, like you said, it's a waste of time if you do it slow. You're better off checking your ego at the door and going lighter and just focusing on trying to hear that click of the barbell, either on your lockouts going, over your chest or over your head. That's how you develop that tissue. And, you might get to a situation later in the phase where that might not feel possible. Percentages are just percentages. You can make them personalized if you're not feeling fast.
So I think probably the easiest way to explain what the GPP lift is to think about what comp blocks 1, 2, and 3 looked like when it came to lifting. You would have a high rep session one week on a lift, and then that same lift the next week was speed, and the week after that it was heavier in waves. We are taking the skill concept, the speed concept, and the high CNS concept and putting them all together. So for phase 1, that will be the back squat, and again, it is phase 1. It is the beginning of the off season. When you think about it, you think about the deadlift, the back squat, the bench press, strict press, that sort of stuff. Obviously, the deadlift is a bit more functional and has a lot more to do with what's actually happening within, a test piece, a Metcon, CrossFit Games Open, whatever. But those 3 things are the things where we can truly build an athlete that has a, strong front side, which you're going to use way more in CrossFit, strong back side, which maybe you don't use it as often, but injury prevention is huge. And then, we don't have to crack any jokes or tell anyone about shoulder issues within the CrossFit community, but being strong and being stable and being in those positions is like super important.
Yeah. The reason why we're doing this is the same reason why, we talk about the deadlift using the trap bar potentially. It's that we want transfer to other movements. So, this is one of those times where if you find a 1 rep max, great. But when are you going to test that again? The highest levels of the competition of, games, maybe semifinals, but you're not doing it in the open. So, focus on moving well and learning how to drive through your feet. And what's great about this rotational schedule is you get different things to work on from week to week. Maybe 1 week with the back squat test in week 1, it's learning how to brace effectively so you can squeak out a couple more rounds. If it's the speed work, it's all right, how fast can I stand up and teach myself proper movement patterns? And then the waves is, it's nice to get a heavy bar on your shoulders and go, all right, I still can move that weight at this percentage, even though I've only been doing speed work. I'm only squatting, and the last time I squatted heavy was, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's nice to have that confidence boost. But I personally enjoy the GPP the most because it gives you that variety, and each week is something different you can focus on versus, if you're doing the same percentage work and it goes up by 2.5% each week.
When it comes to something feeling very new on the blog, a lot of times it comes from multiple coaches using it within remote coaching for their clients. So we have sort of this specific need that's taking place when it comes to a remote client. They're trying to get better at this specific thing. And, as a coach, it's not guesswork, but you do have to put it in there and then see it through, talk with the other coaches about how you're getting better at something. And that, I would say, for the most part, explains how the old category of rep accumulation turned into in-WOD lifting. So one thing that you're going to see on the site that's a little bit different than what you've seen in years past is in workout lifting. So each week there's going to be an interval where it's not that much different than a normal interval, but your percentages are going to come into play. Phase 1, we are working on touch and go work, mostly within the clean and the snatch, different variations there. So you're going to be working on touch and go, but it's going to be personalized for you. And we have found that mixing the percentage work into conditioning, whether it's confidence building, whether it's more just, this is the sport, so it's going to translate to the sport. We've had much better results. I know I have as a remote coach with giving people the in-workout lifting. And again, I don't know if it's like we used to joke that we couldn't get people to sprint on the bike, but if it was bike into wall ball, they would sprint. Or like if we made it a partner workout instead of an interval, they would sprint. There's all these tricks that you have. So there could be a mental aspect to it where, you freak yourself out about doing a larger set of heavier touch and go, but then because it's mixed into that thing that you're so used to, it's there. But you can be on the lookout for. Each week we'll have a touch and go mandatory interval piece that has that work in there. And really what we're looking for is for athletes to get more and more comfortable with doing these things under fatigue. The caveat to that obviously is having it be in an interval piece, still safer in a safer place than the actual Metcon itself.
I think to your point, the reason the percentage-based lifting in a conditioning piece is really valuable is because people, like, you have certain associations with different lifts, at certain weights. So it's like, okay, clean and jerks at 135/95. It's like, okay, that's like a grace type feeling. Oh, it's deadlifts at 225. Okay, it's an open workout where there's 45 or 55 consecutive reps, and an athlete will default to their standard strategy for that weight, for that movement that's being used. But when we kind of introduce the percentage-based things, well, I'm no longer worried about, if the snatch weight is 135/95, like I'm personally not going to probably get as many reps as Sherb is in the power snatch. So I kind of like throw that I'm going to say like, yep, I'm going to do my best, but I can't compete with Sherb when it comes to max set of touch and go at 135. I just won't be able to get quite as many. But if we're both lifting at 70%, it's like, okay, it's 70% for both of us. Like I'm gonna try to hang and get as many reps as he can. So I think it's valuable in the sense that you use your actual percentages, and oftentimes we put notes in there like, hey, we're looking for 6 to 10 reps, and you rip out 15 of them. It's like, well, got it. Okay, let's change it up a little bit, personalize it for yourself. But I think it gives you guys the opportunity to personalize it just a little bit more.
All right, Misfits, just a quick break for our show sponsors. Hopefully save you a little bit of dough on our favorite products. We just got back from the CrossFit Games. While it's obviously quite stressful physically and mentally for athletes, it is assuredly, from a personal standpoint, stressful as hell as a CrossFit coach. So I made sure that I had my Black Label tincture from Pure Spectrum. It's funny, I posted the other day that I take this every day when I leave work, and someone called me out and asked me if it was 1 milliliter or 2 milliliter, and I had to tell the truth. I take 2 full droppers.
7.
I take 2 full droppers
3 liters
every single day of the 2,500. Now, obviously, you could buy the 5,000 milligram, but I do the 2,500. I do 2 droppers. When I'm here, it's, once I'm done work, really try to make sure that I'm doing practicing what we preach in terms of down regulating. But at the CrossFit Games, it was essentially when I felt like I needed it, which was every single day. So always travel with that. That's definitely one of the first things that goes into my toiletry kit, is getting that in there so that I actually remember to take it, because obviously a lot of stress, no matter what the travel is actually for. So you can buy that tincture, the salve, the gummies, all the different stuff, PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit to save.
We are also brought by the best apparel in the game, Sharpen the Axe. You can head to sharpentheaxecode.com and use the code word Keala, Keala, to save 10% and donate 10%. And as important as the gear is, something that was more important, I had the opportunity to talk to some of the companies that are heavily involved in the Keala Foundation, and talking about what those companies are able to do by sponsoring this event and making sure the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run happens every single year. There are a bunch of kids who don't have good family resources. They don't have the ability to even wear shoes on their feet, and a lot of times don't even have a good meal if it's not coming from a gas station. And by donating through purchasing something in our store, you're able to donate some of your order, which makes sure this foundation can run smoothly, because this is an awesome cause. These are kids who don't have a lot of leadership in their life, and this organization makes so they have the leaders and the people to look up to, so they can hopefully break the cycle of what's going on in that island. So again, if for no other reason other than to support these awesome kids, you can head to sharpentheaxecode.com, use the code word Keala to save a little bit of money and help some great kids.
For sure. And we are finally brought to you by ourselves. If you're listening to the podcast, you hopefully know who Misfit Athletics is. Maybe you're listening for the first time. But if all of this stuff that we're talking about is kind of getting you fired up, you're coming down off of that. I just watched the CrossFit Games, so next year I'm definitely going to beat Medeiros and Tia. like getting on board now is obviously the best time, but you can do it for free for the first 2 weeks. So misfitathletics.com and on the SugarWOD marketplace gets you 2 weeks for free in any of our programs. Give it at least those 2 weeks. I would say, you know, a month, a month
7
minimum.
weeks.
But I would definitely stick through the full phase. But those
9 months.
first 2 weeks gets you kind of bought in, gets you oriented on the program, how it works, and hopefully you start to see some progress pretty quickly, and that carries you through to the end of the phase. So misfitathletics.com or the SugarWOD marketplace for either of our any of our individual programs, and then of course teammisfit.com or the SugarWOD marketplace there. If you're an affiliate coach or owner looking to get your gym on a similar program, we have a similar structure to Misfit Athletics, but we obviously tweak stuff for the logistical and time and spatial needs of an affiliate while still maintaining the Misfit Athletics program that you guys all know and trust. Cool. Back to the show.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's a pretty good segue to what we're going to talk about next. If you're new to Misfit Athletics and you get to the site on that, you know, the site or the app on that first day, you're looking at the programming, you're going to notice that we have mandatory pieces. So we're saying, here's what we want you to get done. Here's what we have sort of in mind when it comes to the phase structure itself for everybody. And then it's going to say pick 0 to a certain amount of pieces, 0 to 1, 0 to 2. And that fits in really well with our tagline for 2022, which is everything on purpose. The development of the sport, how fast everyone is progressing, you know, just looking at some of the weights and what's coming within the teen divisions and what they're capable of, which was mind-blowing. It is every year, but there was just something, you know, sort of different to it.
Across the board this year.
Yeah.
It was just like, fuck. Even the, you know, lower half of every field was like,
it's unbelievable.
These people are freaks.
So the everything on purpose is an ode to that, to the development of the sport. And if we are going to go in and work our ass off, it should be on purpose, and each individual thing should be on purpose, and how you prepare, how you warm up. We just did an entire podcast on this that you can go listen to. So everything on purpose. When we get into things like non-mandatory, you not only have to choose pieces for yourself, but you have to choose whether you should do any additional pieces or not. So in the context of lifting, we have 2 things that people can really personalize their phase with. The first one is pretty standard. It's secondary work for the deadlift with the lunging and RDLs. What's so unique about CrossFit being so frontal plane all of the time is it's not just that people either do or don't know how to deadlift, but there's a lot of people that have never used those big movers, those really, you know, the really powerful, maybe a little bit slower posterior chain. So while you're deadlifting, if that's something that you struggle with, we really hope that you know, push some other stuff to the side and do the lunging and the RDL work and really think about it from the standpoint of activating your posterior chain. We did an entire video on our YouTube channel for the RDL. And then, you know, when it comes to the lunging, it's just really important that people don't think of it as a split squat, because then we get to cheat and use our frontal plane once again to lift this weight. And the easiest way to think about it is if you get down into a lunge position and you stand up without moving your back leg, that's going to be more like a split squat. So we are looking to stand up through, and I mean, while you're warming up, you can figure this out in about 2 seconds. You're going to feel your hamstrings and your glutes light up if you actually step up through your leg instead of stand up and then bring your feet together. But this is the kind of thing where it's sort of blurring the lines between a strength piece and an accessory piece. We do want it to be a little bit heavier. You know, there's going to be instructions for both of them there.
Buy some straps.
But those are the kinds of things that can actually move the needle on your deadlift, not only because you're getting stronger, but you're learning something, you're feeling something. Like you feel that there, okay, this is what I'm chasing in the deadlift. You start to do more of your glute activation going into your deadlift sessions, and you feel the muscles that it's supposed to be. And it doesn't feel like Sherb showed up at your house and hit you in your L5 with a ball peen hammer. Like you should get done a deadlift session and feel like, wow, that crushed my CNS and my legs. Mm-hmm. Not my back. Last but not least, we have a very specific way that we're trying to build your squat snatch through the entire year. And before we get into those, even before we get into the skill sessions, so this is prior, and again, this is non-mandatory for people who are struggling with that, we have the tempo pull squat snatch. We have an entire video on this, so you make sure you're doing it right. But essentially, from the floor to power position is super slow, crazy slow. You do not stop at power position, but you are going so slow that you can say to yourself, heels down, knees in front of the bar, shoulders behind the bar, arms are still long, now I snatch. When you do things like that, you can start to realize the control you can have over this thing that feels complicated. And, you know, there's always the joke, how do you snatch? You're at the bottom, you pray, and then you're at the other bottom with the bar over your head and everything's great. That's how you do it. So one of the reasons I thought of this is because Sherb will deadlift, you know, when we do like the clean deadlift work, Sherb will clean deadlift comfortably, technically sound, 200 pounds more than he cleans.
Accurate.
And then he's in his head so much about the clean that he rips it off the ground and gets himself into positions where it's hard to recover. Typically you do because you're strong, but the skill transfer isn't there in terms of you being able to get to that point. So one of the things we did back in the day, I don't even know if you remember this, was the tempo pull clean, and your positioning improved tenfold in like one session.
Yeah, the positional stuff, you know, if you're looking on the thing and you hear us, you know, loud and clear, don't pick a bunch of extra things to do, you know, don't burden yourself with 15 training pieces a day, you know, so I'm going to maybe err on the side of only picking 0 every single day, but you know, you have a glaring weakness in the snatch. Like, that stuff is so important, because one of the things I like to say all the time when I'm coaching affiliate class, and this applies to every athlete out there, it's like, if you can't understand the concept, if you have to learn how to move around the barbell and you can't access your strength, if you don't know how to move with skill, it's great you can deadlift 600 pounds. You're going to snatch 150 pounds because you don't understand the concept of learning how to move around the bar. And for a lot of people, it's because, like you said a second ago, I try to rip the bar off the ground from the get-go. And you have to realize that a lot of the pull, or at least half of the pull that you do, maybe even more than half, has to be with control. Otherwise, you're going to be disorganized. You're going to be wondering why you're running underneath your snatch, or, you know, you PR'd your snatch at 245 4 years ago, but it hasn't moved one iota since. It's because you're disorganized, because you're rushing through it. And for a lot of athletes, tempo is one of the best ways to correct things. And, you know, honestly, it does, you know, I see the first week of it, you know, consider warming up for that. Because a lot of you are going to be like, oh, cool, 60%, I'll just put that weight on the bar and start. Like, no, start, you know, with the bar empty or with 15s on the bar, pull the knee a couple times with tempo. Make sure you feel all the positions we talk about in the video, then progress from above the knee back to power position. And then when you feel like both of those things are accomplished, put them all together and then start your skill work. Because again, that tempo stuff can really teach you a lot about where your body is in space, how you move currently, how balanced you are. And if you aren't thinking about all those things in a very heavy lift, like you've got something that's very important that's missing from your lift, you're going to struggle and you're going to be stuck at a PR for years and years and wondering why you aren't making any progress when you hit every single phase and you do all your percentage work and you make all your lifts. But when it comes to game time again to test, you're at the same place you started at. So, you know, a little PSA there, like, again, I think a lot of you really listen to what we have to say in terms of not overloading yourself with extra pieces. But if snatch is one of those movements you haven't quite figured out, I don't think it's a better way for someone to clean that up and get better than the tempo stuff we have programmed for phase 1.
All right, sure. Talk to us about our bitch work biases.
So the aerobic bias, like Drew said, is going to be the C2 bike. You know, this is something he and I, and actually Hunter as well recently, has been putting a ton of time in. It's one of my favorite ways to start talking about like the fasted cardio and learning how you can flush waste through your, you know, your legs and, you know, build a robust engine. But, you know, for a lot of athletes that come to us, you know, they hear us talk about Sunday miles or other aerobic work and they're like, I have to walk to like get myself in an aerobic zone where I feel like I'm not like having to stop or my legs are pumping out. So one of the best ways we've found to develop that aerobic base is with the C2 bike. And, you know, we had so much fun last year riding the Tour de Misfit that we, you know, just couldn't leave it out again. So those of you that followed along with us a year ago, or a year and a half ago,
2 years ago,
17 years ago, we'll recognize Tour de Misfit. It's back again, but it's again teaching you a little bit about how, you know, damper settings and cadences and whatnot and different durations mess with your body's ability to clear waste and stay moving. So it's another great way to see where you're at and kind of improve over the next.
I'm just looking. I'm looking at it again right now, and that 856.
It's terrible
at the end.
It's so bad.
It's been so long since I've done it, and I still remember exactly what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it just randomly the other day, and we're like, I remember almost the exact time that we got it in because of how like much it sticks out in memory. So really love that for the aerobic bias, and then the anaerobic bias. You know, I know everyone loves the assault bike for that thing, but that's not coming yet. It's coming.
I got a hot take.
Ooh.
I think that the rower is the best anaerobic tool in CrossFit. No, in
anything.
In anything. I believe that it is the greatest tool, and I can defend my thesis if you guys. I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but
I mean, I would agree with you. In fact, that it recruits more musculature than almost any other machine does. It also affects your nervous system way more than any other machine does. And there's just that, like, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but you're like doing these crazy fast, moderately heavy deadlifts over and over and over again, and think, what that would do for your body.
Yeah. On purpose, it's the opposite of the C2 bike, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not only in, the C2 bike, we're literally picking a muscle group and we're using almost just that. I mean, I know obviously, you know, you go to a higher damper and we can start to really get into more of an anaerobic zone, but like you're doing that not only, but also the RPMs are, you know, the cycle rate is ridiculous. You go to the rower and that power output that you're trying to generate over and over, it's just like you're, I don't know, you're punching one of those things that tells you how hard you're punching, and you're doing over and over and over and trying to get that same output. There's something so powerful, and obviously there's skill that comes into play, which I think is important, you know, in general as a CrossFitter to really know how to move your body through space and to be efficient. I think that from an anaerobic standpoint, the rower sort of sets up the whole season. I feel like it's the holy grail when it comes to anaerobic in those really disgusting 5 minute or less.
It's just such a unique machine. The way your body feels after you get done a row sprint. Yeah, bike sprints tend to suck your soul out, but the rower it's not just your lungs, it's not just your legs. It's like your entire body is going basically systems failure. And you know, we wrote a really fun test for. I'm not going to leak it right now, but those of you that watched stage 1 of the 2020 CrossFit Games will have a slight preview to what it is. But we decided that was nice and all, but we'll ratchet it up just a tiny bit more.
Just a little bit more
to really, again, move the needle there. You know, row or die was a great test that we wrote a couple years ago, but one of the things that we discussed in our meetings as of a recap on the year, like, you know, that was a good test, but like, let's push people a little bit further into that window of uncomfortability
and not make you learn how to count cards before you do your test.
Well, that, and like also like what was great about row or die is that, you know, it was a really nasty anaerobic test, but it was on the very short end of that anaerobic window. Right. So we're like, can we push that out a little bit more? Because we see you all, you know, you go to Dubai, you do acid bath, and people are like crawling like Planet of the Apes across the stage to try to finish the event. Like learning a lot about how your body feels in that situation is crazy impactful for your fitness and for your data collection as an athlete. Like you want to know just how hard you can go if, you know, let's say a Autopilot next year, the workout ends with a 1K row or ends with all right, you got 3 minutes to get as many calories as you can. Like that's going to separate you. And you know, what I like about this is just gut check, because you're going to be very uncomfortable for a uncomfortable amount of time.
I don't know if
You need more time?
Yeah, I need more time.
To do the test?
Yeah, definitely to do the test. Yeah, no, I mean that's hard to argue with. I was gonna lean towards the assault bike's the obvious one for a shorter duration if you go hard enough, but
it feels like a power output.
It's an expression of it.
Yeah.
What do you mean though?
I just mean
both are a power output thing.
Sure. Yeah. With the assault bike, what I think people are manipulating is that very short window. Like extremely short.
Right.
When I think of anaerobic and the athletes, especially within CrossFit, I think you start to stretch that domain. So we're talking about like a true send according to science is only whatever, you know, your 30-second to a minute, whatever. But for me, thinking about our context as competitive CrossFit coaches is those powerful athletes that have that anaerobic system. Where do they start where are we drawing the line here? And it's typically, you know, the terribly conditioned ones like myself, probably closer to your, you know, 2 to 3 minute time domain. But then, you know, a lot of them can get up closer to your 2K row, somewhere in that range, but you're starting to really blur the lines there. So for me, the application of the assault bike is extremely specific in that you can increase your max power output that then obviously makes
Drops
your
off too quickly.
Yeah, it just drops off too quickly. The only other thing that I can think of is obviously rewinding to back in the day, those bikes that you could rip the arms off. Those were quite the original Airdyne was quite the anaerobic machine.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's why I wasn't totally sold on the bike. I think the only other one that I would argue is running. Is just being anaerobic, being able to run. An 800, a 400's pretty fucking miserable. Comparing that to like a 500 meter
Sorry, what
row.
it was like.
But yeah, good. It's a good place to start for sure on the rower, and that test will be a real treat for everybody.
Yeah,
it's very simple. It's so simple that it's terrible.
Those are the worst workouts. The ones you're like, oh, that doesn't. Oh yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, you're right. I see.
And that's one thing, we're saying you get a peek behind the curtain. When it comes to us programming, we're looking at essentially achieving the exact same thing through a bunch of different areas. And we have to ask ourselves not only what is the best test for this, but what gets people excited.
Yeah.
And that's one thing to jump back to the lifting real quick. We have more testing when it comes to the lifting this year. Our strategy, instead of having going super light in that primer week, is we have essentially a lift test, 5 weeks, a lift test. And again, there's something to, if you convince, we are motivators by trade. So if you are convincing people to go in and work hard and have that, that carrot that's dangled in front of them, if that's going to work better than starting a week earlier, by all means. Like we understand both sides of it. What makes the most sense from a true programming standpoint, and then what makes the most sense from an adherence standpoint? How do we get people excited about getting in and working as hard as they can? I'll tee this last part up for Hunter a little bit. So basically, when we are looking at the entire season, we are combining our Metcon tests and our interval tests in terms of the style of workout that it is. Got plenty of resources on our website between, the gas feel versus the muscle endurance versus the conditioning. So we combine that with skill. So we go in and we say, okay, what time domain is this? What feeling is it? And what skill do we want to be able to test? So within phase 1, you'll have 2 tests, you'll have 2 skills. And then in the middle 5 weeks, we pull those skills out and we work really hard on them. And then we ask you to get fit at the same time, come back to the end. The theory is that those two come together and then you're fitter and you're better at the movement.
Yeah. So for the phase, we've got handstand walking and rope climbs. So like Drew alluded to, in that test week, you'll get, your interval test has got some rope climbing with a burpee box jump over, and that kind of combination. Everybody always forgets that they need to close their hip in a rope climb until they're not able to close their hip anymore.
Thanks, Dave.
If you need an example, you can do the quarterfinal pistol rope climb GHD sit up workout where everybody took 7 pulls to get up the rope. But so we've got the rope climbing and then handstand walking in a more traditional kind of rounds for time Metcon. But the big thing here is the idea is that more often than not, there are obviously tests during the open quarterfinals, whatever level of competition you are getting to, where the test is purely engine based. It's, hey, there's no skill here. Think dumbbell snatch, burpee box jump over. There's very little skill. There's no barrier to entry. It's how hard can you go? With our tests here with the skill work, we are injecting that movement that is kind of intended to slow you down if you're not extremely proficient at it. And there are more often than not tests that have that kind of stopping point in a workout than they don't. So we kind of inject those into the tests, and then like you said, Drew, we for the next 5 weeks, we kind of pull those out. So we want to get the rest of the program is going to get us into better shape. And then our skill work for the phase once a week, you're going to see a kind of a handstand walk flight simulator progression where the volume increases from weeks 1 through 5. So everybody who's, gets slowed down in the 4 round for time Metcon with handstand walking in it, we can pull that out. Let's train it under low intensity conditions, get that volume accumulation in, and then put it back in and retest week. And then the same thing with the rope climbs. And it's a pretty straightforward progression. It's climbing rope a little bit more every week. And we're going to put together some videos and whatnot that kind of extract out a component of the rope climb that people struggle with, or maybe it's just like, hey, let's think about this week on the rope climb with the obvious goal of kind of it all coming back together for that retest where, you know, maybe now I didn't burn out at 8 rope climbs. It started to get really tough at 15, and then I was able to grind out the last 5 to finish the workout faster. And same thing with the handstand walking. It's like, shoot, I finished that too quickly. Now I have to get back on the assault bike and the barbell because my handstand walking improved. But that's kind of the model that we use, that we're after. And obviously certain skills don't, you know, not all skills are created equal. Those are 2 fairly high skill movements. And then throughout the rest of the season, you guys will see the various types of, you know, your toes to bar handstand push-ups, things that are maybe a little bit more metabolically demanding that still allows that, you know, maybe not necessarily a hard stopping point, but are still things that we're looking to improve from phase to phase. So handstand walking and rope climbs are what you're going to see kind of in those test pieces. And then that skill work every week. If those are 2 tests that you struggle with, that's what you need to be looking for every week, is like, okay, that's the thing I need to work on, so that when retest comes, it's like, yep, that it worked.
Yeah, you mentioned how they're both very high skill, but another thing that translates so well from remote coaching to the blog is a lot of times people come to us for remote coaching because one of these movements, they just can't figure it out.
Right.
And it's that one thing. And while they're both high skill, when it comes to the handstand walk, a lot of times people just got a handstand walk, right? Like you'll lose it and then it'll come, you know,
high skill until you can do it. And then it's
exactly. So that's why you're looking at 2 very high skill movements. You've got the handstand walk flight simulator, where essentially as you're getting better at it, you're not going to get very much rest. You know, you're doing shorter distances back and forth, unbroken. And there's not a lot of rest built into there. But then when it comes to the rope climbs, efficiency is the name of the game.
Right.
Like we're going to put out a bunch of content on it, but it's as simple as if you feel like you're working so hard to get up the rope and you're obsessed with jumping as high as you possibly can and then touching your toes to your hands and doing a single rope pull or whatever, and then your heart rate's at 190, like that's not what we're looking for. So we're going to overload you a little bit with some rest periods in there so that you can see what happens that first week that you have to do 16 rope climbs for time with some built-in rest. What happens the first time that you actually, you know, get fluid with your rope climbs and you know, lock your feet and stand up before you move your arms, all these things. So there's so much nuance when it comes to the skill movements. And luckily, because we've had to go in and, you know, sort of eradicate weaknesses for so many remote clients, we know that path that we're trying to take to get the masses better at something.
Yeah, I just love that idea of the rope climb being put into a conditioning piece, because obviously it'll pre-fatigue, like Hunter was saying with the burpee box jump overs, like make it so you can't really get your knees up high enough. But I've personally experienced this phenomenon when you physically slow yourself down in rope climb and think about the points performance, which will be released in a handful of videos throughout the phase. If you slow yourself down and just think about those consistently without getting frantic, you're going to find that you climb rope much better across X amount of rope climbs. Yes, you might be able to get one done super fast. You might have the fastest single rope climb in the gym, but like, how useful is that in our sport? It doesn't translate. Being able to do one is great. It's like a pat on the back, got my first rope climb, awesome. But like, when you need to be able to do them consistently under fatigue, it's how repeatable is your movement, how efficient are you. That's what allows someone to do Tommy V at regionals, you know, with the 27 rope climbs that are in that workout and get it done quickly. It's because they're efficient and do the same thing every single time. They didn't rush through the first, I think it's 12 to start. They don't do 4 really fast and then stand around and take.
Yeah, I mean, we just got to watch it when you told a CrossFit Games level athlete that they had to add 1 more pull to their rope climb than what they're used to. We saw the craziest shit, the most beautiful 2 pulls, and then the third one was like, what the hell is
never
just
had to do them before.
Do the third one like the first and the second, and you see what happens to athletes of that level, and That's why we got
Think
to
about going down that chain of athletes.
That's why we got to pull it out completely and actually figure out how to do it. And then for the love of God, if you go to a competition and it's higher, just do one more pull the exact same way. The exact same way. All right, now comes the time, Hunter's favorite topic. We got to talk about how you're going to choose your program, what program you're going to go to get there. You're going to be all right. We're going to
now let him start. Go ahead.
and again, we'll go back to the tagline of everything on purpose. I have a huge bias towards this. I'm kind of obsessed with it. If you are an OG and listen to the Misfit Project, we used to have the Not a Drone, thing where you can just get pulled into these grooves in life where you go through the motions and you wake up one morning and you're like, this is just what I do every day, every single day. I'm doing the exact same thing. And it's, I'm staring at my phone, or I go in and I do 3 Metcons, but am I getting any better at this? Like, what the hell is happening? So, that is a personal bias of mine. I try to really think about whether just as a human being, personal relationships, whatever, am I just on autopilot going through the motions? And if so, what are the implications of that? But then being able to use, CrossFit sort of as a metaphor for this, when you're going in to choose your pieces or choose your program, you really got to think about what could actually move the needle for you. Like, are you more concerned with someone else thinking you're better than you are than becoming that actual person? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like when you go to choose where you're at right now and you're thinking about doing either Anywhere or Hatchet or the MFT program, Sherb can talk a little bit about the age group, the masters and the teens. You have to ask yourself where you're actually at as an athlete and where you're trying to go, and give in a little bit to the fact that there's a journey there. Like, if we're saying you're a Hatchet athlete because you're maybe not quite ready for semifinals, but you really want to be able to push hard in the quarterfinals this year and find out how close you are, you will get better on the Hatchet program. This isn't you don't deserve to do all of these pieces. You're not good enough to do all these pieces. You're just at a specific place in your journey where you're trying to reach that final goal of getting to semifinals and get to the CrossFit Games. So if you're going to do everything on purpose, you also need to back all the way up into the macro and say, even if it's just for phase 1, I'm going down to Hatchet. I'm going to give it hell. I'm going to see what happens out the other side. Am I recovering better? Do I feel better? Are my Metcon times better? Your lifts are going to be very similar. So that's one thing you can compare very easily 1-to-1. So
I think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think the question that you need to ask is, to give you a little bit more of an outline, the lifting is identical. So you're not missing anything there if you're like MFT, Hatchet, whatever. The conditioning pieces are all largely very similar with slight weight or rep reductions where appropriate, and sometimes there are none. Sometimes they are the same. It's going to be like, how fast can you go? And that's going to be same for it's Caroline, how fast can you go? And Hunter and Sherb, how fast can you go? And your times are going to be different, but the stimulus that we're after is going to be achieved by not changing anything, which is why sometimes Hatchet athlete will do the same thing as an MFT athlete. I think it comes down a little bit more to total volume, which is where you'll see, Hatchet won't have quite as many pieces to choose from, or just the total volume will potentially be lower. If you're an MFT athlete and you choose 0, and you're a Hatchet athlete and you choose the upper limit of what we suggest, like, your total volume might actually be similar. But you have to ask yourself, obviously, the everything on purpose thing, is what I'm about to do going to move the needle? Like you like to talk about a lot, why am I doing this? Is it just to train more? Well, okay, if you're going to do that, are you allocating the time to warm up correctly, cool down correctly, and then the additional time and resources that go into recovering from an additional 10 to 30 minutes of volume? Like, are you able to do that? So remember, you're not just adding one training piece and there's nothing else that gets shifted around as far as your resources and your gas tank go. So that is kind of how you need to frame it when you're deciding whether to do one program or the other. But I will kind of roll it back a little bit to a more rigid, say, are you a semifinals athlete? If the answer is no, start with Hatchet. it's as simple. That's the easiest flow chart I can possibly provide an athlete who's deciding that.
Well, we get that overlay on the screen.
Yeah, no, well,
That's
why I started with the more like explanatory reason, because I don't want it to seem like it's a pure black and white thing, but in a lot of ways it is. Like just based on what we see athletes doing and trying to do, it's like that, and who the program is written for. Are you a did you go to semifinals last year? No, like did not or could not have qualified. Probably Hatchet is going to be your best bet to see the progress that you want to see.
I was going to say to you, you know, kind of thinking back to years ago where you and I both did the training blog, like how many days there were just doing pieces for the sake of doing pieces.
Oh,
I'm about to do something. You want to come do it? Like, if you can't answer the question very, very clearly and very succinctly why you're trying to do the piece, don't do the piece. I would say you're as fit as you have ever been, and you do class.
Sure.
And you do maybe 3 pieces in a day once in a while. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And this is, you know, if, you know, barring
It's usually for media, not on purpose.
Barring like, you know, a very heavy barbell in a workout, you hang with the top 1% in the entire world, and you do no more than like 1 or 2 things on most days.
Yep.
So that right there is an example. And how many people go to the open and go, you know what, like I thought all the training the entire last year would make it so I would qualify, but I was still not good at this movement, or I didn't have this energy pathway, or I wasn't able to go fast enough to register a good score. And like, I can think of no better example than the quarterfinals / age group workout with the handstand push-ups, the dumbbell push press, and the rowing. How many athletes were like, I went as hard as I could. Why am I 5 minutes slower than everybody else? It's like, that's because in your mind, you think you are going fast because you are always overloading yourself with so many pieces that you can't give something the 100% it requires to know what that gear is like and how to experience that, so that when you go and do that test, you're ready to be going at the speed you need to go to qualify. Instead, you've taught yourself how to move at a pretty decent 80%, but unfortunately our sport doesn't test how beautiful or how consistent or how many pieces you can do. It tests how hard you can go and can you call upon these pathways when tested. And it's an unfortunate thing we see so many athletes doing who are wanting to get better, but just try to do so many things all at once, and then are like, you ask them, why'd you just do that? You're like, oh, because it's hard. It's like, that's not a good enough reason. You need to know why you're going for it. Is it a time domain? Is it a movement? Is it a combination? Is it, you know, probably 15 other things that you can think of to give you a reason to do it, but you need to have that reason or you just shouldn't do it.
Yeah. I don't want to skip over Misfit Anywhere. There are 2 specific reasons why you would follow Misfit Anywhere. The first one is more sort of based on what Hunter just talked about. If you really wanted to qualify for quarterfinals last year and you did not, there's a pretty good chance that there are places where you need our scaling suggestions. So if you go into Misfit Anywhere, you're going to notice it's a very similar version of the workout to Hatchet, which we believe is that stepping stone that takes someone from an affiliate athlete to a more competitive athlete. But you're not going to know which days you need the scaling, and you're not going to know what, you know, a professional coach is going to recommend for you when it comes to that scaling. So when you go to Anywhere, you're going to be able to say, okay, this whole workout makes a whole lot of sense for me, except for these chest to bar pull-ups. It's going to be scaling options for every single movement in the entire piece if it's something that needs to be scaled. Obviously, if you've got a 10 calorie bike or something, it's probably not going to be scaled. So if you are the athlete that, you know, really puts their eggs in the basket of the open, you want to go as hard as you can in the open, do as best as you can to finally make it to quarterfinals this year. Anywhere is going to be for you, because you can go in and say, okay, I was going to scale this to this. They actually completely changed the movement and asked for a very specific amount of reps or a weight range, whatever it is, that's going to be in there for you. The other reason would be, and this is, you know, sort of top of mind right now still because of I can't say pandemic in front of Hunter, but if you're still in the garage gym and you want to know specifically, hey, I pay you guys $10 a month, I don't want to modify my own workouts. Okay, like I pay for the service so that I walk into the gym and get the shit done, and then it's over with. So if you are a garage gym athlete, you go in and Hatchet Anywhere is written as essentially a modification of Hatchet that you can do anywhere. If you have dumbbells and a jump rope, anybody can do Misfit Anywhere. But the really upgrade to it that we've had here in the last couple of competition blocks, and now will really be emphasized in phase 1, is what do you have in your garage? Do you have the C2 machines? Do you have a pull-up bar? It's not just broken all the way down to you don't have any equipment. Now it starts with, I've got a pretty robust set, and then I can go in and just like the scaling, there's modification for all these things, and you can go in and say, okay, what do I want to add in? Like the question we've gotten, I don't know, 100,000 times over the years, email, support tickets, Instagram, what is the conversion of this machine to that machine? Every single day on anywhere, you have that. Now, that holds true for everybody. So the plus tier, our lowest tier on the website, gets you MFT, Hatchet, and anywhere. You can look at a Hatchet workout.
Way more valuable than your Netflix subscription.
Way more valuable. And then you can reverse engineer. Okay, I am a Hatchet athlete. I'm not an anywhere athlete, but I don't have that machine. Guess what? You pull up anywhere. We tell you exactly what your conversion would be for your machine.
Reason you can't subscribe.
And we also have an article on our website that talks about how to modify workouts. And just in case that day somehow something was left out. We're like, oh, I don't have 70-pound dumbbells, or I don't have the abilities.
And we have a table that says
exactly.
if you can't, this many calories on this machine equals that many calories.
The resources are out there, but with anywhere we are trying
in her in the garage, the gym at their in New Jersey.
We are trying to make this as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Last but obviously not least, we addressed Justin LaSala standing on the podium at the CrossFit Games. If you're a Masters athlete, please follow the Masters program. There's always an asterisk to these
35 to 39
situations. Sometimes if you're 35 to 39 and you're trying to win the CrossFit Games, something closer to an MFT, nothing wrong with that. Sure was helping coach. It was something like 17% of the teen women at the CrossFit Games. 2 of them in the top 5. I think the success of those athletes and the fact that the athletes even got there is a testament to our Masters and Teens program. Obviously, the community is still being built, but a lot of that just happened at the CrossFit Games. So I think you're gonna notice a bit more of an emphasis, from our community. Obviously, we're always gonna put the content out, but from our community when it comes to the Masters and Teens, and if the proof is in the pudding, that's the best advertisement.
If you want to really get an idea of like what you can do with our program, you can look at someone like Jenna Micheletti, who went from not qualifying, was like 38th place, so still a very good showing in the 2020 season when they unfortunately didn't have the teens division at the games, but a very strong showing to finishing 5th and spending day 1 on top of the entire leaderboard. And then honestly, if it weren't for a little swim snafu and really just not putting enough time in there, I mean, very realistically, without that score, if she had just gotten an average score in that, she would have been 2nd or 3rd. So and what I love about her attitude is she's like, great, I got something to work on, and got 3rd from last, not last, which is, looking things from that positive perspective, which is something I always try to cultivate in an athlete. But, what's nice about the teen program is it's written for someone who is still developing and looking to make that transition as, hey, I did CrossFit Kids in my affiliate or only affiliate class, but I really want to be Tia Claire, one of those athletes that stands on the podium year after year. You're building a foundation to eventually be able to participate, if you want to be at the highest level, in the MFT program. If you're looking for someone who is in that, I'd say 13-year-old to 17, 18-year-old range, and you're like, what is the best plan to get me to be able to do MFT down the road? It's our teens programming. It's, Hatchet would work pretty well as well, but we have some little wrinkles that are into the teen program that are specific to that age group that helps those athletes develop the strength they need, the endurance they need, and the skills they need to then go out and perform when it matters, which, for right now, it's still in the gym until you get to Madison or wherever it is next. So, if you're a teen athlete looking to move the needle, like this is where you want to start. You want to get started with that, and you'll notice right off the bat that our programming has a very specific approach, and that I'm going to keep the volume, modest until you kind of earn the right to keep doing it. And for a lot of athletes, like we said, with everything else, the mandatory work for most days is plenty of work. So you don't feel like you have to add, 15 pieces on top of that. But I'm excited to see where the next iteration goes. And we got, more teenagers reaching out all the time. So I'm excited to help y'all.
Cheers.
What did we forget? Anything?
I think one the only small thing is that we talked a lot about MFT, which applies to Hatchet, but understanding Masters are just super, super fast handstand push-ups instead of handstand walk are going to be a skill focus, and what we refer to as bar pull as opposed to rope climbing is the kind of the other skill focus for masters. So without getting into like excruciating detail, everything else is pretty similar. It's more of just a kind of nod to the fact that each community needs something a little bit different, not a massively different program.
Everything on purpose.
Everything is on purpose, but those things are gonna, you know, if you're a master listening to this and you turn on, you know, day one on the blog pops up and it's like handstand push-ups. I thought they said handstand walk. Well, the Masters and Teens program have just slight nuances that are, again, like you said, catered towards those communities, understanding that the end goal is, or, you know, as of now, the kind of the barrier is the age group online qualifier as opposed to a semifinal and the quarterfinals and stuff like that. So the season is still structured in such a way that is trying to peak you for your competition, which for Masters and Teens is the AGOQ. But other than that, I think we hit it.
Yeah. So sort of wrapping up this podcast, I believe so wholeheartedly in what this plan is that I don't know if you want to like email me after 9 months and say that you only added 1 pound to your back squat or whatever, and you want to.
All right, I'm gonna do it.
You know, I'm basically joking about like I'm essentially guaranteeing that if you come to misfitathletics.com starting August 9th, follow with us throughout the season, you know, read the articles that we put out, watch the content that we put out to make sure that, you know, you're getting some of that, you know, large group remote coaching from us. You're going to be significantly better than you are right now. Like, to me, that is so cut and dry, so black and white. We've been doing this for so long that we know how much the actual buy-in of the athlete matters. So one of the ways that we try to make sure that that happens right from the get-go is we put down a lot of this information that, you know, a lot of companies would call like their proprietary blend or whatever. We put this information out for anyone to download for free. So you can head to misfitathletics.com and download the programming guide. So if you're like, I didn't take notes or I don't remember all of this, we break out exactly what these focuses are. We break out what the tests are so that you have a sheet that you can throw right up on the refrigerator and write in what your time was, write down some notes. Hey, I, you know, struggled here, struggled there. I tried this. I took my shot when it came to that. And then you can update it when it comes to your retest. And then we have a weekly check-in below those tests where you can go in and talk about where did you win and where did you learn? Like, okay, so I got better at this. That is super important from a psychological standpoint to acknowledge. I've gotten better. I wrote it down. I feel good about this. That's not bragging or tooting your own horn or whatever. That is, you know, I worked my ass off. Here's my win. And then on the other side of that, which is often more important than winning, is learning. So I went into this workout with this strategy. It didn't work. What am I going to do next time? And because you do train so often and because there's so many things that you're trying to get better at once, having a piece of paper where you actually write these things down goes a really long ways. So full program guide, tell you exactly what we're going to do. Even if you haven't subscribed to the website yet, you want to read more about what we're doing before you make your decision, you can download that. And then, you know, the check-in, I think is equally as important. It's almost like, you know, one sort of the theory, you know, that page is here's what I hope to get better at. And then, you know, you have practical application when it comes to test, retest, and check-in.
Gives you a chance to kind of compare notes to like, did I meet the objective that I was going for this phase? And for a lot of athletes, like having the actual act of journaling or like entering into an app makes it so you think more about it. And that's what we really hope athletes are doing. It's not, I just showed up and did the piece to do it, but like I learned from it and I can take that information because I took the time to process it. And now I can call upon it when it's needed, because that's what we're really after here. And that growth is being able to know if this scenario happens, I can do this, or if this happens and goes wrong, I have this strategy to make it, you know, to make like a plan B. So again, use this information, take the extra time to do that, because your competitors, the people you aspire to be, they do that already. So you need to make it part of your routine.
In case you are like me and don't listen to the end advertisements of podcasts, my Instagram handle is @MisfitCoach. Most of you probably already know that. You can DM me anytime. Sometimes when I say this, I get a lot of them and it takes a little while to get through them, but I respond to every single message. If you have questions about the programming, if you are stuck at some point during the phase, if you're trying to figure out what to do, feel free to use me as a resource. I enjoy talking to everybody. I enjoy finding out, there's a lot of people that sort of nerd out in the same way that we do when it comes to programming and stuff. So at Misfit Coach on Instagram, I'm fucking pumped.
It's fucking
we're lucky because like typically post competition, there's the come down, there's the what's next, what are we going to do? We have to simultaneously figure out how to coach at the games and then get people pumped up for phase one. But then we get our quote unquote 1 week break, which is happening right now. And I don't think I'm taking a break. And then phase one starts and we, sort of get excited all over again almost immediately. So I'm pumped.
Yeah. Let's see more of you at the games next year.
Yeah, seriously. All right, ladies and gents, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Thank you to our show sponsors, PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit. SharpenTheAxeCo.com. Use the code word Keala, Keala, to save 10% on your order and donate 10% to the Keala Foundation. And obviously, MisfitAthletics.com. You can try this program, what we just talked about ad nauseum, 2 weeks for free. You can do the same thing in the SugarWOD marketplace. And if you are an affiliate member or an affiliate coach or an affiliate owner, teammisfit.com. That's where you can sign up for our affiliate programming, the program that the three of us follow primarily. Yeah, that's it. See you next time.
Thanks.